Welcome to the Influencer Show with your host, Trishawn Ben Salmi.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Influencer Show where I interview people who can help influence the way you live life in a number of different ways. I'm your host, Steven, and today we have a very special guest for us, Scarlett Lewis. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to listeners and let them know a little bit about you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Scarlett Lewis. I'm the founder of the Jessie Lewis Choose Love movement. I started this organization following the murder of my 6-year-old son in his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook Elementary School. You may have heard about that tragedy in America where 20 first graders were gunned down in 2 first grade classrooms and 6 of their teachers and administrators, one of the worst mass murders in U.S. history. And this was 7 years ago. And I realized after that point that I needed to be part of the solution, that those incidents are 100% preventable. And I did some research. I figured out how to do it. It was already there. It just wasn't widespread. It's not how we normally think. And I created a program that is completely free and its lifespan. It's called the Jessie Lewis Choose Love movement. And there's something for everyone on there. These are really simple, easy skills and tools that we all practice. We can all practice once we know them for the rest of our lives. It makes every aspect of our lives better. And by the way, they all came from a message that Jesse left on our kitchen chalkboard shortly before he died. He wrote 3 words: nurturing, healing, love. And they were phonetically spelled because he was in first grade and just learning to write. But when I came home for the first time after his murder and saw those 3 words, I knew instantly that if the shooter, in our case especially, who was a former student of Sandy Hook Elementary School, whose mother had taught at the school, had been able to give and receive nurturing, healing love, the tragedy would never have happened. And I knew that I'd be spending the rest of my life spreading this message in schools, homes, communities, and workplaces all over the world. And I will just say that now, only 4 short years after launching this program, it's now being taught in every state in the US and over 100 countries, including the UK.
That is absolutely amazing. That's a really, really inspiring story, how then despite all the hardship and the loss, you was then able to actually take the positive side of it and teach others how they can avoid the situation.
Yeah, really important. And you know what, Trayshawn, really important that the youth get involved. We've had these issues, for a long time. And it's not just violence that's increasing in our schools and in our world, but it's also mental health issues, including depression and suicide and anxiety. It's also loneliness that's increasing, and substance abuse. I mean, all of these things we're aware of, but by the way, us adults up until now have just been unable to implement programming that works. This programming works because it's different than the rest of the programming that's out there. This programming is proactive and preventative. Instead of waiting for the issue to occur and focusing on the issue, it actually addresses the cause of why those issues occur, and therefore it is a solution. And it's really exciting to me. And I will tell you something, Trayshawn, a lot of adults don't have these skills and tools. And if they did, they would value them more. I will tell you that. And I just learned them when I was 44 years old. And I'm literally talking about how to have healthy relationships and meaningful connections, how to manage your emotions, how to make responsible decisions, how to not just be resilient when issues happen in your life, but to grow through them. Because that's how we're shaped and molded. And all this has to be taught. We're not born with these skills and tools. So I found myself after Jesse's murder at 44 years old, not having these skills and tools myself. And so I've learned them. My life is exponentially better. And I'm a great model for what this can look like when you have these skills and tools. But I'll tell you what, A lot of adults don't have it either, because if you weren't taught in your home and reinforced in school, really, you get to be an adult and you don't have these, they're called essential life skills. They're really important and they're not hard to learn. They're really easy to teach, easy to learn, and then they're with you in your tool belt for the rest of your life, and you pull them out every day and use them, and it makes everything better.
I definitely agree, and I think that's actually really important. How you said that, yes, it's good to have a good upbringing, but then if you don't have that reinforced in school, then it actually makes it a lot harder, because then eventually, after socializing with the people in school who don't necessarily have the same morals or have the same beliefs, then it's going to get harder for you to then stick to the things that you've been taught at home.
Well, it's true. And by the way, not everybody is taught these skills and tools at home either, because you can't give what you don't have. And, I'm telling you that a lot of parents don't have these skills and tools because they, some schools teach them, but I'll tell you the statistics in the US that I'm aware of, less than 10% of US schools teach these skills and tools. 90% say they do. And that's by checking off a box, like they have a week-long kindness program or they have an after-school program. But this is not a consistent message that impacts the culture. And this does not implement these skills and tools to allow you to use them for the rest of your life. And by the way, so if you didn't learn these skills and tools, that we're not born with them, you don't necessarily have them. A lot of parents don't have them. I mean, I think about my own parents, and they were fairly good parents. I had a fairly decent childhood, but they did not have social and emotional intelligence. And so therefore, I grew up as an adult, and I graduated from college. I went on to work off Wall Street. I wrote for newspapers and magazines. I did some pretty cool stuff. I wasn't socially, emotionally intelligent. And when I learned these skills and tools, they're the things that really help me face my personal tragedy and difficulty. And, we're all connected as human beings on this planet by the want and need to love and be loved. In that way, Trayshawn, you and I are the same. All of your listeners are the same. We all want to love and be loved, but we all feel pain. We all suffer. We're all susceptible to COVID-19 now. That's another way that we're all connected. Yet we all just kind of want to live peaceful lives and have meaning and purpose and be happy. These skills and tools that I'm talking about are the best way to that outcome, 100%. And by the way, there are decades of research behind the efficacy of all of these skills and tools, and 100% of the research points towards having these skills and tools taught in school. And, here's the other thing, and it was hard for me to get adults' attention. In schools, in the government, I was saying, hello, there's so much research behind this. Don't believe me, but believe the research. Our kids need these things. They're killing themselves at unprecedented rates. They're bullying. The bullying is increasing. Violence is increasing. Substance abuse is increasing. Hello, these skills and tools help reduce all that. I really couldn't get anybody's attention. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, it's not the way we've been doing things, right? We've been focusing on the issue and doing all these substance abuse awareness programs, suicide prevention programs, anti-bullying programs that haven't been working. But kind of the easiest thing to do is to keep doing and expecting a different outcome. You know what that's the definition of? Anyway, and I realized early on in my journey, Trayshawn, that it takes a tremendous amount of courage to do things in a different way, right? And to implement a new program. It takes a lot of courage. There are going to be people that are going to give resistance. That they're, they're going to maybe be people that don't want to do it. And so you're going to have to kind of be the role model that says we're going to do this, and nobody wants to see, the bad guy or whatever. I don't know. There's lots of reasons why it takes courage. So then I realized, Trayshawn, that my other job, I thought it would be just to create this program that is like the best program out there. It offers everything and it's no cost. And it's for a lifespan. We call it next generation because there's really no other program like it. And so I thought, well, I'll just create the best of the best and I will give it away because kids need this for their futures. And there's all this research behind it. And then people will take it. But I realized pretty early on that the other part, like 50% of my new job was going to be to cultivate the courage that it takes to implement social and emotional learning in the way that it's supposed to be implemented, by the way, which is embraced by all, at just as important as reading, writing, and math, because here's what the science says. When you implement social emotional learning, kids get better grades and test scores, higher attendance, higher graduation rates, less stress and anxiety, less behavioral issues, less mental health issues. It's a statistically effective way to reduce and prevent bullying. And then those skills and tools stay with you. And the research has gone out, followed kids that are now adults, and they see less substance abuse, less mental illness of all kinds, less incarceration, less violence and anger, even less divorce rates. And we know also it's a money maker. Columbia University in New York did a study in 2015 that showed for every dollar invested in social emotional learning, there was an $11 return to the community. It's a money maker. There's no reason that you wouldn't do this because it's in the best interest of kids. It's going to reduce and prevent so much suffering, except for lack of courage. And so I always talk about Jesse's courage. When I have any meeting to kind of bolster people's courage, I talk about my 6-year-old son's courage in his final moments, where he stood up to the shooter and saved 9 of his classmates' lives before losing his own. In fact, he's now on the short list for the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That is the highest civilian honor in our country. And so Jesse is a hero. He really is. And that's a big act of courage, obviously. And we all hope we're never called on to do something like that. But, but we have to acknowledge that it takes change, takes courage, right? People don't really necessarily like change. We're in our comfort zone and we like to stay here and do things the way that they've been done. But I really do believe, Trayshawn, that COVID-19 has now taken us all out of our comfort zone. Whether you want to be out of it or not, it's not your choice. COVID-19 has taken you outside of our comfort zone. So I love the fact that we're doing this we're communicating now because now's the time. Everyone's out of their comfort zone. They're realizing they're having to kind of muster up this internal courage. They know things are going to have to be done a different way. And it is really my hope that now is the time that schools all over the world, homes and communities, embrace social and emotional learning, and look into it, understand the research behind it. You can go to our website, chooselovemovement.org, and all of that is there, including free programming we've got infant toddler. We actually have prenatal, we have infant toddler, we have pre-K through 12th grade. We have programming for the home. We have programming for communities. And now this new thing, because of popular demand, we have programming for the workplace. So this has to be a consistent message. And can you imagine, Trayshawn, a world that can thoughtfully respond in any situation, circumstance, or interaction with love? It is so exciting. I mean, we can't always choose what happens to us in life, right? I mean, for instance, I would never have chosen to have my 6-year-old son shot in his first grade classroom. That's for sure. No one would ever have chosen to have a global pandemic, but we can take our personal power back in this situation by choosing how we thoughtfully respond to it. And if we can choose to thoughtfully respond with love, which is kindness, caring, concern, compassion, civility, we take our personal power back. We make the world a better place. if we react to this, and we can, and we've seen it, we've read about it in the media with anger, hatred, and revenge, we literally give our personal power away. We become victims. And that is the definition of loss of control. And that doesn't feel good. And that is not a world that I want to live in. I want to take my personal power back, and I want to be part of making the world a better place. That's what we're doing in the Choose Love movement.
That is absolutely amazing. I think that's actually something that's, as you said, needed now more than ever before, because as a result of being by yourself at home, people are then realizing, like, oh my gosh, this actually does affect me. All these different things are popping up, and it's going to be driving them crazy. They don't know how to respond. And just by like listening to your course and reading a book and a host of things as well, they are then able to pick up on things such as emotional intelligence, which plays a huge role in life that people often either underestimate or sometimes even overlooked. I think that's a huge thing that many people are going to be having to face head on as of now, because before you could have distractions, you could go outside, you could do things, but now you're by yourself most of the time. So then you actually have to you actually had the time to do the inner work and work on those limiting beliefs, those habits, those things that may be holding you back from actually just achieving.
Absolutely. Now is the time. Make sure that you use this time wisely. It's so interesting because we always kind of want what we don't have, right? So when we were in our routine, we wanted, oh my gosh, what we wouldn't give to have family dinners around the dinner table, some more time with our family. I remember as a single mom working full time, that's what I always wanted, is more time with my kids. And now we have it. And it's funny because I do these webinars now with employees and with kids at home. And now everybody wants the other thing. The kids want to be in school. The adults want to be at work. And I say, you know what? Just be present where you are. And this is part of what we teach in our Choose Love program, is to be present where you are, not fearful of the future, not ruminating over the past, but just right here, right now, and look around and see what you have to be grateful for. And that's how you can, it's a really powerful mind shifter from the negative to the positive, because we can only focus on one thought at a time. So be present. And I can tell you this from experience too, being present with the ones that you love is the way to live life with the fewest regrets. You will never regret being with the people that you love. And I'm not talking about like sitting next to them like this, right? I'm talking about doing what we're doing, which is looking at them in their eyes, conversing. You will never regret that. And you know, I tried to do that with my kids as much as possible, as much as humanly possible. In fact, I didn't even have a TV because I wanted to spend, I didn't want to be distracted. I didn't want my kids to be distracted. I wanted to be reading to them and being with them. And so I was a little bit freakish about it. But I'll tell you what, I do have very few regrets. And that is a really good feeling.
I think that's really important, because then being present actually helps you focus on the now and make the most out of it. That way, as you said, you have fewer regrets, and it also makes sure that you get done what you want to get done, because you're thinking of it as in the now, instead of thinking of, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. You know that you have to get this done right now. So it actually helps you to prioritize whether you should be playing that game for a couple of hours or if you should be doing your work. And what would you say people should do to stay positive whilst trying to heal themselves?
That's a great question, staying positive. And probably right now, we are the most anxious that we've ever been. Anxiety was an epidemic before the pandemic. And it's interesting. The majority of people are anxious and actually clinically anxious, but they do not get professional help. So and this is kids too, and the long-term outcomes of untreated anxiety are everything that we're seeing, actually, all the deleterious effects that we're seeing. So it's really important to have a positive outlook, to be optimistic, to have hope. And I have to say, and I'll give everyone this skill and tool, because this is what our program is based on. This is the foundation of our program, is a formula for choosing love. So a formula basically for optimism and hope. And this formula can lead everyone to thoughtfully responding with love in any situation, circumstance, or interaction, including COVID-19. So I'll walk you through it really quickly. It starts out with, I bet everybody can guess, courage, because courage is the most important character value and it underlies everything. And we use courage every single day, and we probably don't even realize it. And by the way, everything that I'm saying is the latest scientific research and the latest neuroscience. So science tells us that courage is like a muscle, and we can actually strengthen it. Now, I know most of the time when we think about courage, we think about like Jesse's type of courage, or the firefighter that runs into burning buildings and things like that. But we actually practice courage every single day when we're kind, when someone's not being kind to us. That takes courage. When we have the courage to speak out and speak up for what we believe in. When we are our authentic selves, when we take off that mask we think that the world wants us to wear, and we are who we are. When we do the right thing, when we tell the truth, when we face our fears. I mean, all of these things take courage, but we don't normally acknowledge that as courage. But the more that we do it, the more that we think about it, the more that we do it, we're wiring our brains towards being more courageous. So we start with courage, because courage is the most important character value that underlies all the rest. And then we go, that strengthens us. Remember, I talked about gratitude. Gratitude is so vitally important. And it can be a great mind shifter, because you have thousands and thousands of thoughts every day. Adults have tens of thousands of thoughts every day, the majority of which are negative and repetitive. That's what research tells us. But here's the thing, we only focus on one thought at a time. So we can only focus on an angry, resentful, fearful thought, or a grateful thought. So, and there's no judgment in anything that we're feeling. Anything that you feel is okay. Anger can be used for good as well. But when you're ready to switch out of that lower energy, you can think of something that you're grateful for. And there's always something to be grateful for. I mean, I was giving a webinar to a group of high schoolers the other day, and they were like, some of them were like, nope, there's nothing to be grateful for. We're stuck at home. Like, this sucks. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. What are you saying? Like, how can we be grateful? And I said, well, okay, let's start from the bottom of the barrel. How about toilet paper? How about being grateful for toilet paper, because you have that, right? How about being grateful for indoor plumbing, because, you know, the majority of the world doesn't have that. And that is really nice when you need it. And so they laughed, but it's true. Gratitude doesn't have to be these big, huge things. They can be very little things. In fact, a professor of positive psychology that used to be on my board of directors, Dr. Tom Brzezinski, calls these moments in our day micro moments of joy. And he says that every day we have multiple micro moments of joy, and they're here, but usually we're not present to notice them. So here's a challenge for your audience. Micro moments of joy, be present in your day and look for them. And you will find them. And then when you find these little joyful moments, try to savor them and expand them. Even just having like a cup of coffee, that could be sitting down, having a micro moment of joy, being with your kids around the table. At one point, you'll take yourself back, you'll look around and you'll say, This is amazing. Maybe it's a moment with your dog, right? When you're walking and it's a beautiful day. Maybe it's a new flower you never noticed in your garden. There are all sorts of opportunities for micro moments of joy. Then that actually strengthens you to consider forgiveness. Now, forgiveness has been the most important part of my journey in taking my personal power back. People say, oh my gosh, how could you forgive the man that murdered your son? Well, I say back to them, how could I not? Because if I didn't, I would be giving him control. And he's dead, by the way. He killed himself as well, over my thoughts, which impact my feelings, which then impact my behavior and how I treat other people. But forgiveness is like taking a big set of scissors and cutting the cord that attaches you to pain. It's literally taking your personal power back. You can forgive anyone of anything and take your personal power back. And it doesn't mean, we don't understand it a whole lot because we don't talk about it. We don't teach it. We do in the Choose Love movement, because by the way, it is the #1 way to have healthy relationships. And Harvard University says in their the longest ever study on human life, that healthy relationships and meaningful connections are the key to happiness. And how do we get those? By forgiveness. But by the way, it doesn't mean that you forget what happened. It doesn't mean that you condone what happens. It simply means that you cut the cord that attaches you to pain and you forgive. It doesn't mean that you have to continue the relationship. It doesn't mean that you ever have to talk to the person again, but it does mean that you take your personal power back. And it's important to note that forgiveness starts with a choice, and then it might become a process, which it is for me. You may have to do it again and again, but that's okay, because in some cases, it's the only way to take your personal power back. Then that strengthens you to be able to step outside of your own life, the busyness, your family, your distractions, your social media, even your own pain and suffering, to help somebody else. That's compassion in action. That's our last character value. So when you have the courage to be grateful, and grateful even when things aren't going your way, when you have the courage to forgive, even if the person who hurt you isn't sorry, and that's also, by the way, forgiving yourself. And when you have the courage to step outside of your own busyness and even pain to help somebody else, you're choosing love, and you are making the world a better place.
I think that's actually really important, because then just by choosing to forgive, how you said that, how it ends the suffering and everything, it also then allows the person to then put into perspective how what they've done has affected not only you, but then how it's actually affected themselves internally. So by doing so, it kind of actually shocks the person who's actually done the thing, because then they're thinking, oh my gosh, I was expecting a reaction, how come? And then it actually forces them to look internally in themselves and actually see what they did wrong and how they can actually not only help better themselves, but actually help others who may be going through the same thing that they are going through. And what advice would you then give to those who may have lost a loved one at a time like this?
Oh, that's the, yeah, I know there's a lot of loss going on now amid COVID-19, and it's very difficult. Best case scenario is that you can be with your loved one in their final moments. And I know personally people that have not been able to be there with their loved one, and they feel very, very bad about that. For me, I have strong faith, and that is very helpful to me with my beliefs. That helped me with the loss of Jesse. And there are stages of grief, and we all go through them. The 6th stage is meaning. That's a hard one right now, to find meaning in your suffering. But eventually, if you can come to that, if you can find meaning in the loss, if you can honor the person that you lost, honor their life in some way. I mean, I'm doing that with Jesse right now through the Jesse Lewis Choose Love movement. We honor his life, his memory, his messages in everything that we do. And that really helps me in my grief for sure. So I would say to people who are mourning right now a significant loss, that you might want to think about how you do that. And it doesn't mean that you have to start an organization and, you know, speak publicly about it. It might mean that you use something that was important to that person that you lost, and you donate money to that organization, or you volunteer, or you help spread the message, or if your loved one loved books, maybe you volunteer at the local library, or you volunteer to go in and read at a nursery school, or to nursing home patients. There's so many different ways to honor lives, and that's how you extend memories. While you're doing that, you can talk about your loved one, and that really is my advice for people right now.
I actually think that's really, really inspiring, because as a result of being able to honor and find meaning in that, it then forces you, it then, no, not forces you, but then it then encourages you to then make the best out of any situation, really.
That's what we're trying to do. And, you know, ultimately, I think if we had a 360-degree view of everything that's going on, I believe ultimately everything is an opportunity for learning and personal growth. And I can say that because I can see how, you know, even losing my son, and of course I would give everything back to have him here, it's not going to happen. So I can see how even that situation, that tragedy for me, was a huge learning experience, a huge growth experience, and it really enabled me. You know, I researched about social emotional learning. Now I speak worldwide and offer this program and meet new people all the time and get to share Jesse all over the world. So it was a learning opportunity and a huge growth opportunity for me. So I think ultimately it's hard when you're in it to see that. But I think if we all had a 360-degree view, we could look in and we could understand that that is really the case.
That's really important, because as a result of just having that time to then look back on it and putting yourself in that sort of like the observation mode, it then actually allows you to be able to internalize and actually get clear as to why you are actually sad or maybe even upset about this tragedy, and it helps you then put steps towards like how you can go about moving forward. And what are like the top 3 lessons that you have learned along your journey, and how did they then influence the way you look at life?
Wow, that is a loaded question. The top 3 things that I've learned in my journey, I guess, is that we're all this as human beings. We're all connected. We see so many rivalries. I always refer back to Nelson Mandela's quote, children are not born hating. They're actually born gravitating towards love. And if they have to be taught to hate. And if they can be taught to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. I mean, everyone, regardless of age, regardless of where you live, any perceived difference at all, we're all the same in the one and need to love and be loved. And so I guess I learned that, and that is really, really important. And I learned that a lot of times after tragedy, or even things that happen in our lives that we're not happy about, our initial reaction is to blame, fault find, finger point, right? And even after Sandy Hook, I'm sure you can imagine the majority of people immediately blamed the shooter and his mom who gave him the gun. And, I sat back and I watched that, and it didn't work for me. It was just too easy to assign blame. Blame, the definition of blame is the assignment of pain and responsibility on someone else, right? And I knew that, and I saw everybody trying to do that on the shooter and his mom. Now, he was obviously responsible for what happened, but he wasn't born a mass murderer. Wasn't. He was cultivated into what he became by his environment. And by the way, if it really was all of his fault and his mom's fault, then it would never have happened before. But it had happened before many, many times, and it would never happen again. But wait a minute, now it's our new normal. And so it can't be all their fault. So if you're looking for somebody to blame and finger point and fault find on, who are you going to blame? Well, then, people blame the politicians, they blame guns, they blame all of these different things. But ultimately, I realized that I would have to take my part of the responsibility for what goes on in my community and my world in order to be part of the solution. And that was the lesson that I learned through my tragedy. And that was a big lesson of personal responsibility. Too many people, especially with social media, right, sit home on their couch and they can give their opinions, but they're not going to do anything about it. And so, so that was my second big lesson. And, I guess my third lesson is all about post-traumatic growth. And, we have this negative bias that we're born with. Our brains are wired for survival. They're not necessarily wired for happiness. And so we focus on the negative. I talked about our thoughts and how the majority are negative and repetitive. And this negative bias is woven into everyone's DNA. And so that's why everybody focuses on the negative. That's why these things haven't been fixed, because we're focusing on the issues, and the issues are actually growing right in front of our eyes. So there's this thing also, everybody's heard of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's interesting though, when you look up post-traumatic stress disorder, you'll find that between 7 and 14% of the population suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder at one point in their life. But the vast majority of us experience something called post-traumatic growth. Nobody's ever heard of it because we're looking towards what might harm us. But this thing is out there, it's researched, and it actually is when we grow through difficulty. We actually grow through difficulty. And if you think about how we grow as human beings, mostly it's through challenges, roadblocks, even pain and suffering. That's when we grow. And so I told you about my own personal growth. I've grown tremendously, and there's a scientific term for it. It's called post-traumatic growth. We have woven that into our programming, and I know we're the only program that has that, because nobody else that I've talked to has ever heard of it. But it's really important that as human beings, when we face challenges, even COVID-19, that we understand that ultimately we are going to grow through these challenges, and that we start to look for ways that we can grow individually and as a society, rather than looking for ways that it's going to harm us. Right? That's a huge difference. We're wired to look for ways that it will harm us. But we know ultimately that in the end, we're going to grow from it. And looking for that can bring that growth about quicker.
That's actually really important because as a result of then, like whatever you look for, you will eventually find. So if you're looking for things to help find and help growth, then eventually you're going to get to a stage where you either find that or someone will then point you in the right direction, which then allows you to get down to the deeper cause as to why you may be feeling that like there's a hole in your life, or you may be feeling that you may think that you've actually gotten over something, but every day you still think back to it. So then it actually allows you to then dig deeper below the surface and get to the root cause as to why you may still be hurting.
Hey, Trey Sean, I have a question for you. How did you get to know all that you know at your age?
I think that the one of many things was just being able to not only attend personal development events, but actually going through like different hardships in my life. Because as a result of doing so, I was then able to learn like loads of different things at a young age, and then as a result, I was then able to have conversations with people from all different backgrounds, all different age groups, who can then help just like add to like my knowledge. Really, yeah.
Because you're totally awesome. I want you a Choose Love ambassador in the UK and all over the world. You can take that part of the world. How about that? And just crush it.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Awesome.
If you could go back and relive one moment in your life, what would it be and why?
Wow. If I could go back and relive one moment, I think my most cherished time was with my boys. And so I think the moment that I would relive would be doing anything with both of my boys. If I could do that, that's what I would ask to do, because those were my most cherished times. Absolutely. Like, talk about micro moments of joy. Those were my macro moments of joy. I loved being with my boys. I only ever wanted to be with my boys and doing fun things. So if I could relive a moment, that's what it would be.
Having a moment to like do something over again, it then allows you to actually not only be grateful for that, but it actually shows you just how important like time is.
It's true. Every moment, every moment. And you know what's interesting, Trayshawn? People, I think, through COVID-19 are realizing, oh my gosh, like I could get sick and die. And, you know, I think I realized that we're not guaranteed a tomorrow after 12/14/2012, when Jesse was murdered. And we're not guaranteed a tomorrow. You never know. I sent my son off to school as a first grader in a very safe community. You could get safer than Sandy Hook, Connecticut. Rolling hills, stone walls, a little elementary school at the end of a cul-de-sac. So we're never guaranteed tomorrow. And you live your life in a different way. You live your life with meaning and purpose. Not one moment do you ever take for granted. And that's a gift that you only get having gone through something like that, the tragedy. That's growth. But I think that that's a gift that a lot of people are getting now, realizing that they're not guaranteed a tomorrow. And I think they're making different choices because of it, which is great.
That's so true, because as a result of maybe like just like missing out on any opportunity in life, really, it then puts you into a different perspective, just knowing that, oh, I wish I could have done this. And then it actually helps you to then focus on the now, like you said earlier before about focusing on the now. And then it actually puts into perspective how just like the things that we say do can actually have a huge impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Uh, what are your views on the word legacy, and what legacy would you like to leave?
I think people are really thinking about that now. And my legacy, you know, a lot of times our legacies are our children. And that's the most beautiful legacy that you can leave, and you want to instill all of your values and character traits and knowledge into your children so that it lives on, and memories that you have with your children. And that's certainly true with me and my son, JT. And my legacy will also be the Jessie Lewis Choose Love movement, and all that we've done and all that we will do. I hope it goes on forever, even after my time, to help our most vulnerable population first, which is our children, and then spreading this kind of peaceful and loving and this concept, a choice, out into homes and communities and workplaces. I mean, ultimately, my goal is to spread this awareness that you have a choice to thoughtfully respond with love in any situation, circumstance, or interaction. Can you imagine a world like that? That's a world that I want to live in. That's what I try to model in my own life. And of course, I'm human, so I don't always do that, but it doesn't feel good when I don't. And so I get back up and I try my best again. But that's the kind of world that I want to create. And I'm taking my part of the responsibility for doing it.
I think that's a huge word, responsibility, because when people often want to create change just in any part of their lives or just in the world as a whole, they often want others to do the thing. They say, oh, it's all right, someone's already thought of that, someone else will do it. But it's about then actually choosing to take action in the now, and then being the change that you want to see, because then as a result of doing so, it then inspires, encourages, and influences others to do the same.
Absolutely. Yes.
Totally, I definitely agree. And what would you say are the top three the top three mistakes that people often make when it comes to forgiving?
The top three mistakes when it comes to forgiving. Well, right off the bat, most people don't understand what it is. I can tell you that. When I started this program, people said, you can't teach kids forgiveness. That's way too lofty a topic. Well, what we found is that it's not too lofty for kids. Kids learn it easily. They use it every day. And when you ask them what their favorite character value is, it is forgiveness. And when you ask them why, they say, because it's a superpower, because it feels so good to let it go. I'm using air quotes because those are quotes. So I think that a mistake is that you don't really know what it is. People think that you have to just forgive and forget, right? I mean, isn't that what we all think about when we think about forgiveness? Well, that makes it an immediate impossibility right off the bat for me. I'm never going to forget what happened to my son, but it's really not about that. And that's why we really have to delve a little bit deeper into it. They think they don't understand it. They think it's forgiving and forgetting, and they think that it's giving up power. They think that they're giving a gift to the person that they're forgiving, right? And they say, they don't deserve that. They don't deserve that gift from me, when they don't realize it's really a gift that you're giving yourself. It's the gift of forgiveness for yourself. And I think those are the top three mistakes that people make. These are great questions. They're making me think.
Thank you. I think it's actually really important how you said about how when people often, when it comes to forgiving, they think that by forgiving they're giving away their power, when actually they're taking it back, because you're not staying in that loop of negativity when you're dishing out loads of things to each other and it's just bouncing off of each other, when actually you're actually ending the loop and ending the cycle. And as a result of them taking back your power, you can then focus that energy into something else and another area of your life.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's definitely really important.
And science says that when you forgive, you have around 70% anger. I don't know about you, but I know that prolonged anger is not good for your health and well-being. I don't want to walk around an angry person because that's reflected in the way I treat other people and in my relationships. When I choose to forgive, then that anger dissipates. And I can tell you that it really does. It's incredible. That's part of the gift that you're giving yourself.
I totally agree with that, definitely. And then
Yeah.
what advice would you then give to your younger self?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think my younger self was really concerned about image. My younger self was concerned about money and making money and status, because I kind of grew up in that environment. And I realized after the tragedy that almost every major choice I made, from where I worked to relationships, was made out of fear. And so my advice to my younger self would be to make your choices based in love and not fear, because the outcome looks vastly different. And the fear is all right here. And you can actually choose love, and your life would be different. So I know my life is the way that it was supposed to be. And if I had made different choices, I might not have had the kids that I have. And of course, so I'm glad that I made the choices. But if I could go back and give my younger self advice, that's what I would say.
I absolutely amazing. I think that's actually really important, that because like many people are actually suffering with that in like today's day and age, because just like a host of things, how everything's moving so fast and how everyone really does care a lot about like their image and how much money they have and so much other things like that. It has a huge effect on them, not only physically but actually mentally, and that's something that people are often failing to understand. Because yeah, it's good to like look good and everything, but if you're not the same on the inside, then there's actually no point in having all of those things on the outside, because the inside is empty. And it's something that people often actually forget, that they have to work on the inside as well as the out.
Absolutely.
Could you share some advice with those who may be struggling to let go of something that may have happened to them in the past?
That's a really good question. I'll give you a little story. I was talking on a military base, and there was someone who was telling a story about somebody that had done something terrible to them. It was a woman. And she said, suffice it to say, he went to prison for 20 years. And she said, I saw him in the grocery store and I wanted to forgive him. It was 20 years later, and I knew that that's what I should do. So I had my card, I had my purse, I walked up to him, and I just dropped everything. I couldn't do it, and I ran out crying. And while she was telling me that she was crying, she was really upset. And she said, what would you say to that? What would you say to that? And so this was something that had happened to her 20 years prior. And I said, is he worth giving that power over your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions 20 years later? Is he worth it? And do you want him to have that power? And she just kind of stopped and looked at me. And I realized that it's something to think about, because also sometimes we get attached to our stories and our emotions, and we're comfortably uncomfortable in them. And it's a change. It's like, oh my God, what could I do and who would I be if I wasn't attached to the person who, hurt me so badly in my youth? What could I be then? That's a scary thought for some people, right? But you can, it doesn't matter when the tragedy occurred, you can forgive and release yourself. Because of course the answer is absolutely not. Somebody that did something so horrible to you decades ago is definitely not worth giving control, allowing them to have control over your thoughts, that control your, that influence your feelings, that influence your behavior. Absolutely not. But the only way to take your personal power back, I don't know any other way, is through forgiveness.
I feel like because as a result of just like just going through the whole process of forgiving someone, not only does it then help you let go of that, but then it also just helps you to grow as a person, because then you no longer have to carry that burden around with you. What would you say is like the number one thing that you want people to learn from reading your book?
I want people to know that love never ends. I want people to know that. So it's interesting. I had written a children's book, and I started it when before JT was walking. He's 20 years old now. And I was married at the time to his dad, who worked on Wall Street. And on 9/11, he was in the city, and I remember I was home taking care of JT. I was watching those towers come down. But the day before, my horse had had a beautiful foal. And so I would look at the TV, and then I'd peek through my curtains out into my backyard in a pasture where this horse was, this pastoral, beautiful mother's love for her child. And it was hard for me to reconcile the two images. And so I decided to write a book about the most important things that a mother can teach her child. And so I would put JT in a little red flyer wagon and with my camera around my neck, and we'd go out to the barn, and I took all the pictures for the book. It actually ended up taking me, I think, 10 years to write the book. My whole family got involved. My brother helped with the photographs and editing. My mom helped with editing the story. There were always things that we wanted to add. It's not perfect even now, but at the end of the book, I took a picture under a canopy of leaves of part of a fence and the little foal kind of running forward. And I was going to finish it the end, because that's how you finish books, right? And of course, by the way, we're all writing our own book right now, everyone. This is called the book of your life. You're all writing it right now. And so usually books end the end. And so I had done that, and my mom was editing it, and she said, the end, it just sounds so final. And it's not final, because this is just a story of a mom and her foal, and it could be a human mom and her baby, but they have a whole life to live. So let's say, and it's all about love. That's what the whole book is about. So let's say love never ends. And I loved that. Love never ends. And so that's how we ended up ending the book. And that's what I also ended up putting on this bench that faced Jesse's tombstone. And I did that so that I pictured myself, it's under a tree, and sitting there and spending time with, Jesse's spirit and his tombstone. And I do, but I carved, I didn't do it, I had somebody do it. I carved love never ends on the bench. And I think that that's a really important message for everyone, especially during COVID-19, that love is the most powerful force in the universe, and it never ends. It never ends. It doesn't end with death. And so I think that's what I'd like for everybody to take away from that book, for sure.
That is so powerful. I think that's something that is really, really important, and at a time like now, that people actually need to awaken to the fact that it doesn't actually end, and it's something that people need to actually hear, and not only hear but actually implement in their lives. And lastly, could you then share with the listeners where they can find you if they'd like to find out about any upcoming things that you may have?
Sure, absolutely. You can go onto the website. It's chooselovemovement.org. All of our programming is on the website, and everything that we have is no cost. So I encourage people to go on. I mean, right now, if there was a school that wanted to implement, we could do training online. There is actually no training required. The educators learn alongside the student, which is really unique as well. But I can get on and help with implementation. Please go on there and check out everything. We have a coronavirus tab. We have lots of things to cover. And we also have a workplace program for any CEOs that I'm sure are listening to your show. And if they're not, they should. And we do charge for our workplace program, but 100% of the funds go back into the nonprofit to support our free programming for schools, homes, and communities. And this is such an important message, and employees coming back to work definitely need this for their health and well-being, for their psychological and physical safety, and also for their productivity.
I definitely agree that it's something that's needed more than now. And for those of you who would like to check that out, please do. I'd like to thank you for coming on the Influencer Show today.
Thank you so much, Trayson. You are awesome. You've given me the best interview anybody has ever given me. Wow. I'm so impressed with you. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much. What fun.
I'm glad you liked it. I really did too. I'd like to thank you listeners as well for sticking to the end. And if you guys would like to have the chance to be featured on the show, you guys can apply through the email that should be popping up on the screen. And I hope you guys have a great day. That's it from me. Bye.